Calgary, Rocky Ridge.
Well, thank you, Madam Speaker. It's my pleasure to rise and add my voice to the report stage debate on C-8. Here we are on March 28th, debating the so-called fall economic statement, which was tabled just before Christmas, 3 full months after the summer election. It was supposedly called to establish a mandate for an urgent, transformational, once-in-a-lifetime moment. Now, I don't agree with the rationale that was offered for last summer's snap election, that it was a transformational moment. But what is transformational is what has happened since this bill was tabled, and during the over 3 months during which this bill has been debated and studied. It might not be reasonable to have expected this government to have taken an invasion of Ukraine into account when it tabled C-8, but Vladimir Putin has long threatened Russia's neighbors, including Canadian friends like Ukraine. Putin's Russia has also long been a threat to Canada's Arctic lands, Canada's territorial waters, and Canadian airspace. And there is nothing in this statement that will address the now critically urgent need to prepare for our own self-defense and to increase our capacity to provide all forms of aid to our friends and allies. Financial aid, humanitarian aid, logistical aid, and yes, lethal military aid are all urgently needed by Ukraine. Since this bill was tabled, the Parliamentary Budget Officer has confirmed that the government's military capital spending, including its 2017 Secure, Strong, Engaged funding announcement, is hopelessly behind schedule. In other words, even the spending that has been approved and authorized by Parliament isn't being spent. The PBO went on to point out that more money will probably still be needed in addition to what's been approved to meet the goals of existing capital procurement. This is a critical failure of government at a time when Canada's ability to defend itself and support its allies is at the most urgent point that it's been in decades. I'm pleased that the government has reversed its earlier positions and finally announced that it will buy the F-35. Good. Now do ships. Canada was a founding member of NATO. It's our principal alliance, and it's secured our peace since 1949. We have an obligation to it to increase military spending to 2% of GDP, yet we can't even get our act together to spend the money that Parliament has already authorized. Russia isn't going to wait for us. China isn't going to wait for us. The time to act is now, and there's nothing in this bill that will fix systemic failures in Canada's long broken defense procurement system. Also, since this bill was tabled, the true structural nature of Canada's inflation crisis is becoming increasingly clear. When I spoke on this bill at second reading, the most recent report said that the average Canadian house price was $717,000. That's about 14 times the annual earnings of an average Canadian worker, and absolutely unaffordable for a typical Canadian household. But now, just within the last couple of months, new reports show that the average price is now $100,000 higher than it was when this bill was debated at second reading. Just moving from one stage of debate in this bill, the price of a home in Canada has gone up $100,000, Madam Speaker. And it's certainly not just housing that has gone up. Groceries continue to go up. And of course, the price of energy has also gone up. Again, the war has enormous effects on the price of energy, but this government must take responsibility for its role in the inflation crisis. This government is charging ahead with its annual carbon tax increase set to take place this Friday. Gasoline is already over $2 a litre in some parts of Canada, and this government will push gasoline prices higher along with the cost of home heating. Since this bill was tabled, the Bank of Canada has published research confirming that the carbon tax alone is responsible for 0.4% inflation. Well, the bank's target rate is 2%. The actual rate is now just under 6%. And the carbon tax, one single piece of government-engineered inflation, contributes 0.4% of that inflation that we have. So the government should be fighting against inflation, not explicitly contributing to it with punitive and increasing taxes. The real shame of the global crisis of affordable and reliable energy, which, given the situation with the degree to which many parts of the world rely on Russian imports, is that this government has done everything it can to prevent Canadian energy from reaching foreign or even domestic markets. Canada could be doing its part to keep the price of energy under control by replacing Russia's exports. But this bill is a continuation of the government's anti-energy, anti-Alberta agenda. We now find ourselves in an inflation crisis exacerbated by both high energy prices and a punitive domestic carbon tax. And it's not just the carbon tax, though, Madam Speaker, that's going up this Friday. This Friday is also the day that the tax on beer, wine, and spirits will automatically go up and further fuel inflation. You won't see this tax increase in this bill, Madam Speaker, because the excise escalator is an April Fool's gift that this government announced in Budget 2017 that keeps on giving every year, that raises taxes without a vote in Parliament. So no bill, no vote, but a tax increase nevertheless. And another thing that is not in this bill, Madam Speaker, is any demonstration of short, medium, or long-term fiscal discipline. The endless deficits enabled by monetary expansion and increasing taxes mean that inflation makes life increasingly unaffordable for Canadian families. Again, I refer to the Parliamentary Budget Officer, whose recent report confirms that the conditions for the withdrawal of stimulus spending in Budget 2021 have been met. Yet the spending continues. So they laid out criteria to withdraw the stimulus, and they got rid of the criteria and just kept the spending, Madam Speaker, in this fall statement. The bill contains $70 billion in inflationary new spending on top of $176 billion in non-COVID spending, extra non-COVID spending that the government has run up. Brings Canada's debt total to over $1.2 trillion, Madam Speaker. So I remind this House that the government was teetering on the brink of a recession and a horrifically blown deficit projection even before COVID struck. This government blew all of its fiscal credibility long before COVID. It has ignored every single fiscal anchor or guardrail or election promise that it has made on deficits. And now against this fiscal backdrop, the Liberals invited the NDP to abandon their opposition role and join the government in a de facto coalition. Oh, and I know, I can already hear it. I can hear the howls of protest. I can hear the desperate explanations. I imagine them saying, we've heard it before, that, just because we've entered an agreement to support the government on all confidence and supply votes until October 2025, and the government has agreed to brief the NDP on any such potential motion before it's made public, and that the NDP has promised to snitch if they get any wind of opposition procedural tactics that might slow down the government's agenda at a committee, it really doesn't mean it's a coalition. None of them are cabinet. That means it's not a coalition, right? Mm-hmm. I can hear it. Oh boy, didn't I pass Political Science 201? It's not really a coalition, right? Madam Speaker, we'll let Canadians be the judge of what's really going on here. You can call it, they can call it whatever they want. But the really sad part about what we have seen here is that an opposition party is now supporting the government rather than opposing it. And that comes at a time when this government increasingly fails to govern competently and transparently, which takes us right back to the beginning and the circumstances around which this bill was tabled. So this bill was tabled just before Christmas, and in its briefing on the fall economic statement, the PBO told us this year both the annual financial report and the public accounts were published December 14th, the latest publication date since 93-94. Comparatively, Canada was among the last of the G7 countries to publish their reports. Canada falls short of the standard for advanced practice in the IMF financial reporting guidelines, which recommends that government publish their annual statements within 6 months. The delay of the government's release of its audited financial statements undermines Parliament's ability to meaningfully scrutinize proposed government spending, end quote. So this matters, Madam Speaker, because it's symptomatic of declining basic government competency. We have a government that needs to be challenged by a loyal but vigorous opposition that will challenge this government to better serve Canadians. Instead, it's emboldened by the defection of the members of the NDP caucus to the government in support of this tired and incompetent.
Unfortunately, the honourable member's time is up. I do want to remind members, instead of heckling or thinking out loud, especially parliamentary secretaries, that they should hold on to their thoughts quietly until it's time for questions and comments, which it is right now. Questions and comments. Questions et commentaires. The l'honorable député de Abitibi.
The honourable member for Abitibi-Témiscamingue. Oh, is that it? I'm sorry. Mirabel. You are forgiven, Madam Speaker. In C-8, you can see that there is an encroachment on provincial jurisdiction, and it's this new tax that is just such an encroachment. We had proposed an amendment at Finance Committee. We said that Quebec should have the right to withdraw, and we asked for provinces to be able to tell the federal government not to step on their jurisdictional toes. Now, the Liberal chair of the Finance Committee has not only said that the amendment was not receivable, but also that we couldn't even debate it. I'd like to know, Madam Speaker, if he thinks it would be a good idea to allow, I'd like to ask my colleague if he thinks that it would be a good idea to allow provinces to withdraw on the taxation issue.
I thank the member for Abitibi-Témiscamingue pour son question.
For his question.
He seemed to refer to something that happened at Finance Committee, and I'm not sure I caught exactly the piece of tax legislation that he wishes. That he's concerned about provincial jurisdiction, but provincial jurisdiction is something that as a conservative, we always respect, and we respect the Constitution and the delineation of provincial responsibilities. So I'm not certain I have a specific answer to his question, but I certainly believe in provincial jurisdiction.
Questions and comments. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary of the Government House Leader.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I listened to the comments made by this member today, and I can't help but once again reflect on the fact that no Conservatives that have spoken, at least in my time listening to the debate today, have actually been talking about the substance of this actual bill. Nonetheless, I know it's so important for them to keep debating this, as they're the only ones in the House that are still going on about this, and I would hate to think that this is done out of the intent of trying to delay passage of this bill. So in the interest of seeing this continue to debate this and give them more and more opportunity, I'm wondering if I was to move a unanimous consent motion that we sit till midnight in order to allow Conservatives to keep speaking and debating this, would this member support that?
Member for Calgary Rocky Ridge.
Well, Madam Speaker, I don't know that I would object myself, but I can't certainly speak for all the members in the chamber, so that he's welcome to try that on. But it's a shame, though. He must not have listened to much of my speech, because I spoke about a number of things that this bill does and a number of things that this bill fails to do. I drew attention to the way this bill withdraws the criteria around the continuation of stimulus spending. They just drop that and then continue with $70 billion in non-COVID additional spending. And no, I'm certainly, if I didn't get to that in my speech for lack of time, I will not support this bill. I don't think any of my Conservative colleagues will. We have no confidence in this government.
We have time for a brief question. The honourable member for Elmwood-Transcona.
Sure. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I just wanted to hearken back myself to the Finance Committee, where we did pass an amendment to this bill in respect of some of the money that's being disbursed for quarterly reporting on how it was spent. That's exactly in response to the comments by the PBO that the member cited in his speech about the late filing of public accounts. We had proposed another amendment actually on the rapid test purchases. That particular one, because it was asking for information from the provinces on how it was spent, was defeated not with the help of the NDP, who in fact moved that amendment, but with the help of the Bloc at the committee, because they didn't agree that provinces should report out on how the money is spent. And so I do want the member to know that we continue to care how the public's money is spent, and we are actually proposing solutions to ensure that there is good scrutiny of government spending on this side of the House.
A brief answer from the member for Calgary Rocky Ridge.
I don't think I caught a question there, but I will respond to his comment. He's a thoughtful member. I've served on committee with him before, and I know that he is a champion of transparency and accountability from government, and I certainly hope that he will continue to demand that, even as his party is choosing to support this government through to 2025.